Hello and welcome to Greenbytes Wednesdays. Greenbytes Wednesdays is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations and steer consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of our digital footprint across Nigeria's technology ecosystem. We hope that with this advanced knowledge, we can introduce you to some tools, trends, and best practices that can enhance your knowledge about digital sustainability. Are you curious about climate change? Are you a tech enthusiast or a climate entrepreneur? Come on board and learn on this episode as we get on with every conversation of the Greenbytes Wednesday podcast series. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, funded by the UK government through the Digital Access Program. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote and I am glad to be your host. Welcome on board.
Every time you click, something on your phone, or each time you download, even if it's a sticker or a WhatsApp message from your grandma, and every time you also stream on Netflix, on YouTube, wherever it is, all of this has its impact. It has some energy usage or consumption that is accrued to every little action we take on our digital devices. And with this going on means that there's also quite a lot of carbon emissions on the other side, adding to the conversation around climate change. And if we do not really evaluate how these are actions really matter, if we're not really mindful about these things, we just will think, well, I can do as much as I want on the internet. And we do not think about the repercussions or, the impact when it comes to the part we might not see. And that's what brings us to the context of how smarter designs and how digital sobriety on our individual parts can lead to lower carbon emissions. Speaking with Mr. Olamide Fagbuji, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Climate Technology and Operations at the Office of the President, he's also on the advisory board for the NCCC Secretariat, and NCCC is the council, the Nigerian Council on Climate Change, where he oversees the digitization of a new open procurement process. So tell me a little bit about that in a bit. So we're really, really honored to have you on the podcast. Honorable is coming to mind.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome indeed. So let's start with a little bit of background about you and the work that you do.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name, like you said, is Olamide Fagbuji, and I'm the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Climate Technology and Operations. So just giving the portfolio itself, there's a lot of collaboration with other agencies of government, and obviously the overarching goal of the role is to drive green growth in Nigeria and also help the President meet the objectives of Nigeria to decarbonize the economy based on our obligations, global obligations. We signed up to things like the Paris Agreement, and also we have agreed to cut emissions by 37% assisted. And so these obligations are things that we're looking to, in the short run, bring together a galvanized climate action to be able to decarbonize the economy and also look at the broader imperative, economic imperative, to make sure that in doing so, we're growing the economy slow and also providing jobs for our people at scale. The decarbonized economy in Nigeria simply means an economy that is productive, but sort of shifting away from the traditional economic or business model of consumption and disposal. This is a bit more secular, and it also integrates responsible practices into biodiversity conservation and also how we exploit minerals. So, essentially, if you wanted to define this correctly, this is a shift from the consumption of fossil fuels, which have, as you know, a lasting effect on the environment itself and biodiversity.
Yeah.
And also, the global picture is that the climate is warming at an alarming rate, the effects and impacts are clear. It's affecting livelihoods. There's a lot of migration that's happening, and it's affecting the economy adversely. Projecting forward, there'll be a need, there's an imperative to make sure that as we grow the economy, that we start to imbibe sustainable practices, so that by the time we are reaching our goal of shifting away from fossil fuels, we have a very economy that is carbon neutral.
So thank you very much indeed, Olamide. And I know that the president also echoed this at the recent sustainability meeting was attending at the UAE, where he talked about decarbonizing the economy, green growth, and you sort of broken it down in very simple terms, which is what we try to achieve with Greenbytes Wednesdays. To see that we don't just speak over your head and throw all the technical terms, but that we can communicate very clearly in ways that you get it and you are really inspired to take action. So back to the focus of the conversation today. Honorable talked about, Olamide spoke about, Olamide spoke earlier about how Nigeria's target is to have at least 47, to achieve 47% reduction in our emissions where we're assisted. And I think it's 20% not assisted. And that means that whether we get the funds or not only on part of the government, but even as individuals, we all have a part to play. We all have some roles to play, and all hands needs to be on deck for us to achieve this target. So I'll come to if we have to sort of define the term digital sobriety, what does that mean in practice?
So, digital sobriety is an emerging concept, and it basically speaks to how we can responsibly use technology in a way that is considering the environmental impact, and with a view to limiting the adverse effects of using technology. We all like to think that technology is an enabler.
Yeah.
Nowadays, most things have become easier to do, so to speak. Whether it's commerce, whether it's being able to keep in contact with loved ones, or even just generally getting services. But also this has a cost, right? So the idea of digital sobriety is just to start to think, and it's a global concept, but it's just emerging. It's just to see how we can start to also minimize the impact of our consumption, our energy consumption driven by the use of technology on the environment. I can speak more to that, but I believe you have more questions.
Yeah, maybe we can just lean on that and talk a little bit about some various strategies or initiatives that you think we can implement here in Nigeria if we really want to promote digital sobriety as a concept.
Okay. Well, Nigeria apparently is the largest consumer. Nigeria's digital transformation is actually taking off. Is accelerating at the highest rate in Africa. I think Nigeria has about it accounts for 82% of the internet usage. Sorry, telephone lines in Africa. Phone lines, mobile phone lines, and they have I think about 26% of the data usage in Africa, just by the sheer population of Nigeria. Now, this will mean that also this will raise our nation's profile, because don't forget, digital technologies actually account for about 4% of global emissions, GHG emissions, and this is set to expand in the short term, between 4 to 7% in the next decade. Now, in Nigeria, we have an economy, that is transforming very rapidly, and I think the pros of the use or integration of digital technology is that we are now able to accelerate economic growth, right? Create green jobs, and these emerging jobs that we did not have are now starting to at least provide economic diversification. So, in order to start to mitigate some of the negative impacts of digital technologies, one of the things that we really need to do is to really rethink try to strike a balance between the pros and cons of dig- uh, the usage of digital technologies. So, for instance, productivity versus vision, right? The point is the more you use your say device, the more you are demanding energy for it. So it will just make maybe a bit more sense if it was being used for productive use. But again, that's a conversation. And, but the other thing as well is the proliferation of devices as well. Is something that we also need to start reconsidering. There's a huge market in digital devices. You have your mobile phones, you have cross-platform devices. And there's a whole raft of things that we use now that we consume, but it's not necessarily the point of it. There needs to be a balance between how often we replace these items. So because what happens is they contribute to a lot of e-waste in the country, and when you generate e-waste, it has a lot of effect on the environment, because e-waste sometimes is the energy penalty for recycling e-waste, and just the industry for e-waste recycling is not as developed yet. So that's something to consider as well. So I think one other thing also is just the fact that a large part of our energy demand in Nigeria or consumption is still largely provided by fossil fuels. So, I mean, if you look at the base stations, for instance, for telephone and telecommunications, while there's efforts to start to convert them to renewable energy sources, a large part is still being driven by fossil fuels. So, the more consumption, the more digital technology we consume, and the more of this we use. So that's also something that we need to start looking at.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate this approach of, how we engage digitally and sort of drawing the line between leisure and productivity, because it helps us think, okay, if I'm doing this for productive sake, then I know that, okay, there is some higher sense of value to it compared to if it's for leisure. But we cannot take away the fact that most times also we really need this digital space for our leisure. But that brings me, you also highlighted the need for us to then consciously rethink how we engage with this. But I'm thinking, do you know of some smart designs that helps, it, realistic for people to minimize their energy consumption? For example, are there, meters? Are there apps that sort of shut down or measure? Just smart designs, applications, tools that make it possible for people to become more energy efficient.
Okay. So I wouldn't put the bulk on the user. I think I'll start with the macro picture, which is the infrastructure itself can be. I mean, let me just say that there are obviously applications that you can use to sort of monitor your usage, and you can use it to audit your overall consumption and your usage of your footprint in the digital space, right? But it's up to the people to also decide on how their consumption pattern is going to, just depending on what you're using. But on the flip side, the energy management of the networks, say, for instance, the data centers, for instance, this is where a lot of the energy demand is really, where a lot of gains can be achieved in terms of optimization. So there are a few technologies that you can use, like digital asset management, to reduce redundancies. So when the servers are being called upon, they're not all just working without not necessarily just giving you the throughput that you need. There's also a need to maybe rely more on software as a service.
I see.
Yeah. So
What does that mean? Software as a service?
So software as a service is basically not requiring physical processing in your location.
Okay.
Yeah, so say for instance, I'll give you a really good example. Amazon Web Services provides solutions where all your calculations and all your throughput is done offsite. But typically, traditionally, you will have a whole data center which you have to pull on site in the location. So it has its pros and cons and all of that. Also, this could be more cost efficient depending on how it's being looked at. But on a larger scale, these help to actually drive down both the impact on the environment and also the cost. One other thing as well to notice, even data centers, the way they are being designed nowadays, there's a need to also realize that overall the picture is a lot of our mirrors where the data is being stored is in the subsea. There's a lot of duplication of our data, so that we do know how that works. So there's not a lot of awareness on the impact on the marine life, in the open seas, because a lot of these data centers are also heating up the marine life and creating a lot of changes in the ecosystem. So that's also something that awareness needs to be raised on. So all in all, I think that the footprint of digital usage on our massive infrastructure that we use needs to be reviewed.
And I've never heard anyone, at least in conversations, really put this focus on marine life as you've done that. And I think that's a really good insight. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I've been speaking with Mr. Olamide Fagbuji, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Climate Technology and Operations at the Office of the President. From this conversation, there is no doubt that embracing really smart design principles will really help us to sort of prioritize sustainability, help us to achieve lower carbon emissions. But that also means that tech companies or techpreneurs, as we call them, they probably need to understand, okay, what's the, environmental component of this thing that I'm designing? What's the energy consumption? What does that mean? How can we optimize this? And that also leads us to the role of artificial intelligence, AI, in making all of this possible. I know sometimes when we talk about AI, many people just think of the likes of, ChatGPT and large language models, but there are also quite a number of others. Like if you think about reactive machines, if you think of the machine learning or deep learnings, as we call them, there are also some AI models around narrow learning or limited memories. So AI in itself is quite broad, and we think it's way more than ChatGPT or whatsoever. Popular models, large language models we know out there. But then this brings me to the question of, how do you think that artificial intelligence is really transforming, and by transforming, I mean for the better, the conversations around sustainability?
So I will say that at the current rate, the AI is helping us to actually optimize at scale. Because of the amount of data that this machine learning and architecture is able to optimize and analyze rather. What is happening is that we're able to see how to allocate resources and patterns that you would normally take quite a bit of study and analysis to understand emerge a bit more quickly. So in terms of just being able to be efficient with resource allocation and also energy demand, there's a lot of predictability with energy demand nowadays. You need that information, you need that data. So at the moment, incorporating AI into projections helps us to be able to build that infrastructure in a way that is responding to future demand and proliferation of our energy needs. So I think that AI going into the future is something that will be critical for us to be able to be more to decarbonize the economy.
And by being critical, I really do look forward to seeing when AI can really help us optimize, can, like you said, it has that predictive ability, and we can rely on that to also optimize our energy consumption, to optimize how our data center or cloud computing system really work, such that they are lesser emission but still as much efficient as we need to get by. But if I could turn to you again and ask Olamide, do you know of some successful case studies out there of tech companies that are leveraging AI for sustainability?
Mm, okay, I mean, the obvious answer will be, say, Google, for instance. With Google, I think what they've done is to understand that the demand that they on because they have a lot of services and products, and basically they're ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So they have been able to actually understand what sort of future we need to prepare for. And because of that, they use AI, I would say, I mean, they use it in daily practice just to understand things like what's what their users are likely to, because and they use this for optimizing their data centers as well, this information. Um, Energy demand for Google is becoming a very big issue because by their forecasting, their data centers are going to require up to triple their energy demand in about no double rather by 2030. So, but they're looking at other sources of energy to meet this demand, and that's why they're now integrating nuclear energy into their energy mix. So I think last year there was a agreement with a company called Kairos, and they're going to be deploying this solution to fill the gaps and also make the energy that is being used for the data centers. So
Okay, good. I was also curious to know if there are anyone like Nigerian, for example, that you know, but I know it's probably a case that there are a few and they are not out there, we don't know about them. But is there any that comes to mind that is more indigenous, if we'll say?
Not readily at this point in time, but there must be some of them.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And if you narrow sort of piggyback to where we started from, to the issue of digital sobriety, as we sort of take the conversation home and wrap up now, I wonder, what are some steps that you think individuals can take today to reduce their digital footprints while still engaging with technology? So don't say put away technology. So while we're engaging with technology, what are some steps that we can be mindful of?
I think one of the steps that we can be mindful of is, or what we can adopt, is to again rethink the balance between productive use and other uses. And just maybe keep all the visual apps for that, which you can find in your app store. If you have to use it at home, you can find it in those places. Then also, in terms of how we consume devices, the actual hardware, there will be there's a lot of advantages to maybe extending the life cycle of the devices. Nowadays there's a trend for replacing devices and with fully functional devices. And it's also cost effective for the person as well. For the user to actually keep the devices for a bit longer, as long as the utility is still there, and things of that nature. And I think a third will also be just looking for ways to contribute to efforts to raise awareness on this issue as well. Because if there's no real impact if it's not done at scale. So I think it also rely on a lot of awareness and sensitization on the parts of those who know to also let the community be aware of the impact on the environment as they use the technology. We encourage technology as the future.
So we can't shy away from it. Thank you so much, Mr. Olamide Fagbuji. I've called him honorable a few times.
Thank you so much.
Are there any final thoughts that you want to share before we call it over?
I would just like to say that in the Nigerian context, that we really look forward to adopting technology as an enabler of growth. The future is very bright, especially for young people. Some of the things they imagine nowadays that allow productivity to be more accelerated.
Yeah.
We think that we will be able to, working with some of the new policies of the government around development of technology, or I think people need to key into some of these things, and also build capacity and enjoy the growth, the green growth, take advantage of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed, Honorable. Mr. Thank you very much, Olamide Fagbuji, for coming on Greenbytes Wednesdays. Thanks to you for watching, for listening. We've been speaking about smart designs for digital sobriety and the connection with lower carbon emissions. We also touched on the role of AI in advancing digitization here in Nigeria, looking at some best practices across the world, but also sharing bits and tips of what we think will be operational, what will be practical here in Nigeria. And that's the size of this episode of Greenbytes Wednesday. Thank you so much for your time, for listening. Please share this with people in your network if you found it useful, which I hope. And you can also find it everywhere you listen to podcasts, on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. You'll find Greenbytes Wednesday there. Greenbytes Wednesday, it's also a part of the Scale for Net Zero program. And Scale is the Smart Climate Awareness Learning and Empowerment program, funded by the UK government here in Nigeria. That will be all for now. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. I want to say very sincere thanks to the team. Wonderful Ayo and Ajibola that has made it possible for us to bring you this episode and many more. Check out other episodes, and between now and when next you hear from me, bye for now.
Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Greenbytes Wednesday. This podcast is brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, thanks to funding from the UK government through the Digital Access Program. Have you learned something new? Please share with your network, share with your friends, as I look forward to hosting you on yet another episode of Greenbytes Wednesday next week. Follow us on our social media platforms, check out our courses, test yourself, see how much you know, how much you're learning when it comes to digital and sustainability ecosystem in Nigeria. And I should remind you that as you balance your knowledge of digital ecosystem, also remember to stay committed to a shared and sustainable planet. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Bye for now.